Hi guys, welcome back. Quick video showing you how to remove the axle from a swing axle gearbox. Gearbox is out of the car, so it's much easier and it's drained of oil, so it's much cleaner as well. Anyway, it's a short video. Hope you enjoy it. Okay, here's how to remove the axle and axle tube from the swing axle gearbox of a Beetle. The gearbox is now sat on its side. I've got one axle already off and it's sat on its side with an axle sticking up there. So just so you've got some context, the pointy end of the gearbox, that end there is the bit that goes into the chassis. This is the bell housing where the clutch and everything is. This is the axle tube here. This is where the brake drum goes on the end, and there's a wheel bearing in there. So the first thing to do is take the wheel bearing off. To get the wheel bearing out, first we have to remove these four 14mm nuts, well they're actually bolts, to hold this cap on. So here, 14mm socket, not the 13. Take them off. One, two. Make a note as well of how many washers there are. There's a big flat washer and a spring washer behind each one. It's important to put them back the right way. And then this cap just comes off. Might need a bit of persuasion. There is a piece here to tap with a hammer if you need to. Yeah, but we don't want to be hitting it too hard. Also make a note of the order that the parts come out in. So we've got the cap here, and there is inside there a seal and the gasket itself. Now, as I mentioned on the last video, I've got a replacement seal for this, so I'm not too concerned about damaging these at this point. And then there's the spacer there, and then there's a little rubber cone shaped thing there. It's like another seal. Again, just be careful, there's no need to damage it really. Pop that off. That is actually tapered, so it needs to go back on the right way. And then there's a spacer shim there. And then the bearing itself. But before we go any further with this now, we need to just undo the boot at the other end of the axle tube. So I'll reposition the camera and we'll get that done. Right, down at the bottom of the axle tube now, or the end of the axle tube where the gearbox end is, there's this smaller of the two side plates. This is welded to a cup-shaped part of the tube, and the idea to get the bearing off is to lift the whole thing up. So we need to undo all of these 6 13mm bolts there first, and then that plate will be loose. And I'm actually going to replace the gasket underneath here, but we'll come to that in a minute because those gaskets are actually important, not just for leaks, they're spacers as well. So we'll just undo these first, get them started. 1, 2, 3, 4. Obviously, ideally, you wouldn't be working on a gearbox this dirty, but it's very difficult to clean inside there with this plate in place. So I'm just being careful as I'm taking it all apart. Don't want to get any mess or bits of dirt or whatever actually falling in the gearbox. To keep it clean as possible inside. Pop these nuts off. One. There. And there. And there. oops, they're actually little studs with nuts on the end, so if one comes out like that rather than just a nut coming off, that's not the end of the world. Right, that's all 6 done. There are little washers behind them, so we'll just pop those off as well to keep them safe. One there. There. One there. And the last one. Excuse my arm from the camera. Yeah. There. Right, so that's all those off. So now the whole tube will lift up and away from the gearbox. So next thing to do, back at the top again, is to get a puller. Just reposition the camera. Excuse the shakiness. Right, back at the top here now, we're going to get a puller and pull this part of the axle tube that way to draw the bearing off. You can get it off by smacking that with a hammer, but it's really really high risk of damaging parts of the gearbox and the circlip that holds the axle tube in, or the axle shaft itself in. So I wouldn't recommend that. Use a puller on there instead. I will get that together, reposition the camera, and then we can do that. Right, that's the puller in position. Let's see if it can actually get it off. Some tension on it first. It's turning the axle, but that's okay. But the camera's not picking it up, but it is pulling it off. It is working. It's good. This is the first time this puller has ever actually done what it's supposed to do. It's the most useless tool I've ever had. But for now at least, it seems to be working. Alright, it's suddenly gone loose. Let's pop that off. Take it off a little bit. There we are. So you can see now it's released the bearing from the end of the axle tube. That was painless. Pop that off there. Let's see if we can get it the rest of the way by hand. And we can't. There we are. So, happy days, the bearing is off. Because everything else was loosened before, the whole tube will just pull off now. There we are, like so. And drip oil everywhere. Well, that's okay. One other thing is this little spacer here, which sits on there, just pops out. It is slightly beveled and it's got beveled inside there, so we just need to make sure that goes back on the right way when it goes back together again. Right, reposition the camera, come on there, so you can see me. Reposition the camera now, and we can get the actual axle itself off. That wasn't easy to say. Right, here goes. Okay, we're now looking down at the gearbox. So this is the axle shaft itself here, and this is where the cover plate was that we took off, and the rubber boot goes sort of there. So these gaskets here are the ones that are leaking, but they are more than just gaskets. They are actually spacers, and they set how much drag, for want of a better word, this plastic daisy has on the end of the axle tube. So it's important to put them back in the right thickness, and count how many there are. This has actually got 2. The other side, oh no, there's 3. Could be 3. Might be 3 there. It's 2. It's difficult to tell because they're all so dirty, but it's just got 2 there. We need to measure the thickness of those and put them back. It's a bit of trial and error. when you refit them, and we'll cover that later, perhaps in the next video when I get around to doing that. But for now, remember, there's 2 of them, and they're important. So pop them off, put them over there. Right, the next thing is this cover plate here with these 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 bolts on. These are 13 mils. Again, some of them are going to come off as nuts, some of them are going to actually bring the stud out. Either way is fine, it doesn't really matter. Just a bit of blue roll just to wipe up some of the oil on here, just to make it a bit less grubby. Oops. That's just coming off there. This daisy just pops off as well. This is kind of what forms a seal in between this dome section and the corresponding one on the end of the tube. So this is important to keep it clean and damage free. This one's dirty, but it's not damaged. It's got bits of grit and stuff on it, but they will clean off. So keep that safe to one side and soak up some of this oil here. It's important to mention, actually, talking about oil, I did drain the gearbox before I started this. Otherwise I would be swimming in the stuff by now. It goes everywhere, and as you know, gearbox oil stinks. That. Just a bit more swabs, nurse. I need a nurse, actually, somebody to hand me things. A theatre assistant, a lackey. That's the worst of it, that'll do. Now back onto the 13mm, which is this one. It's gone underneath, there we are. 13mm. We'll just loosen them off first, then let the little ratchet gun do its bit. Oh, that was tight. Oh, come on. There we go. You need to also make a note of the way around this plate is. It's got little tabs on it. One here, you can see that, and one here for knocking it up this way. Also, these holes are not equally spaced, so it will only go back on one way, but it's important to make sure that you put it so that these tabs are top and bottom, so that you can actually get at them next time you come to do this job. Otherwise you'll never get this plate off. You don't want to be putting something in between the plate and the gearbox and damaging the mating surface, because that will make it leak. Right, that's got the threads broken on those, so we can just put them off with the little rattler. A little dish to put them in as well, keep them all safe. One. Two. These ones are loose anyway, because these are the ones that hold the clutch cable bracket, and I had to undo them to get the gearbox off in the first place. So that's that done. That's done. Just taking little washers. We've got a thick washer. There we are. Got a thick washer and a little spring washer on each one. Yeah, there we are. You see, this one's come out as a bolt. Or it's brought the stud out with it. No problem. Washers as well. There we are. That's that one. Right, that's all of them out of the way. I'm just going to move the wheel bearing is still on the desk here, on the bench here, and it's going to get covered in muck, so I'm just going to move that out of the way. Keep that safe, move that. My hands are white. So now we've got all those bolts off. So the next thing to do is very carefully give this a little tap there. Oops. Let's just start to separate. Do this side there. Wash this pinged off. See, a bit of muck went in there then, that's not good. Got it. I'm going to shove a rag in there. A load of blue roll instead. I'll do it. Same thing. It's just to stop any debris and bits of rubbish falling in. There we are. Now carry on. Tappy tap tap. This side. Oops. There we go. This side. You can hear the different sound as it goes looser. And that's it off. Yeah. Just lift that away. Move that. Right, now in here is a little circlip. Everything's black, so I bet you can't see it, but there's a little circlip there, and next to it, I'll move the camera and we'll zoom in on that. I'll perhaps do it on my on another camera to get a close-up of that. In fact, yeah, we'll do that now. Right, this is just so you can see what I'm talking about. Here is the axle shaft. There we are, down here. And it goes into the gearbox, and there is a little circlip there that needs squeezing apart. But just there is a little notch in the bearing casing. Remember that, because that notch is important. But for now, got some circlip pliers, squeeze these two together, pop the circlip out, and then the axle shaft will just lift off. Just rotate the whole assembly so that I can get at this a bit easier. And then it's a standard circlip, they just squeeze together and ping off and take them out. Oh, come on. Always difficult to do. Ah, come on. Come on, nearly there. Oh, that was close. Come on. There we are. Got it. There we go. That's off. That's just a normal circlip that just comes off there. And now this sort of plate arrangement here, it's kind of like a spacer, but it's got a little tab in the end of it. There we are. I'll get that on camera and we can see, because we'll need to remember this for later. There we are. That has got on it a little tab there, and it's that tab that sits in that little recess in the bearing that we looked at earlier. That's that. Move it out of the way. And now, almost there, the axle itself just lifts out, nice and easy. And then there are little plates that it sits in. These are a bit fiddly, not least because they're covered in grease. See if we can get them out with a magnet. Yep. There we go. So there's one. It's just a little semicircular, where are we? Here we are. Little semicircular plate that just kind of allows the axle to rock without having too much play in it. And there are two of them, on there, on there. And that is how you get the axle out of a swing axle gearbox.